Right now, you are never more than a short walk from a clean, private toilet. You flush, you wash your hands, and the whole thing vanishes from your mind in seconds. You have done this your entire life without a second thought. But here is something that should stop you cold. For roughly 99% of human history, none of that existed. No toilets, no paper, no plumbing, no sewers, not for a single one of your ancestors, going back hundreds of thousands of years. And yet every single one of them, every day of their lives, had to solve the exact same problem you solve so easily. So how did they do it? How did ancient humans go to the bathroom in a world with no bathrooms at all? The answer turns out to be far more clever, far more disgusting, and far more important than you would ever imagine. Because the story of how humans dealt with their own waste is secretly the story of how we built civilization itself. So let's go back to the very beginning, before villages, before farming, when humans were wandering hunter-gatherers. And here, the answer was beautifully simple. They just walked away. When you live in a small group that moves constantly across the landscape, waste is not a real problem. You go a little distance from where you sleep and eat, you relieve yourself on the open ground, and then, days later, your whole group moves on to a new place entirely. Nature does the rest. Rain, insects, and bacteria break everything down, and the group is long gone before it ever becomes a hazard. In fact, this instinct to move away from your own waste is ancient and deep. Almost every animal does it. Even your own feeling of disgust, that powerful urge to keep away from waste and the smell of it, is not random. It is a survival mechanism, hundreds of thousands of years old. Your ancestors who felt that disgust stayed away, stayed healthy, and survived. The ones who didn't got sick and died. So that flash of revulsion you feel is actually one of the oldest survival tools you own. But then around 12,000 years ago, humans did something that changed everything and created a problem we are still dealing with today. We stopped wandering. We settled down. We invented farming, built permanent homes, and stayed in one place for generations. And suddenly, that simple solution of just walking away no longer worked, because now you couldn't move on. You were stuck, living in the same spot year after year with dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of other people, all producing waste in the same place every single day. For the first time in history, human waste became a crisis, and how a settlement handled that crisis often decided whether it lived or died. Because here is the deadly truth our ancestors learned the hard way. Human waste, left near where people live, gets into the drinking water, and contaminated water spreads diseases like cholera and dysentery, silent killers that could wipe out an entire community. Sanitation was not about comfort, it was about survival. And the civilizations that figured it out first became some of the most advanced the ancient world ever saw. Which brings us to one of the most astonishing discoveries in all of archaeology. Travel back about 4,500 years to a city called Mohenjo-daro in the Indus Valley in what is now Pakistan. And what you find there is almost unbelievable for its time. Nearly every single house had its own private toilet, a brick seat connected to covered drains that ran beneath the streets, carrying waste away from the homes. This was a citywide sewage system, thousands of years before most of the world had anything close. These ancient people understood something profound, that to live packed together in a city, you had to control your waste with the same care you controlled your water and your food. Their toilets are older than the pyramids of Giza, and they were not alone. Far to the north, on a windswept island in Scotland, a village called Skara Brae, 5,000 years old, had drains built into the walls of its stone houses, leading away from small indoor recesses that may have been among the earliest indoor toilets in Europe. All across the ancient world, wherever humans gathered in large numbers, they were quietly, cleverly, wrestling with the same fundamental challenge. And no one turned it into a spectacle quite like the Romans. If you walked into a public latrine in ancient Rome, you would be shocked. It was a long stone bench with a row of open holes, sometimes 20 seats side by side, with absolutely no walls, no doors, and no privacy whatsoever. People sat shoulder to shoulder, chatting, doing business, even holding meetings, all while relieving themselves in full view of everyone else. To a Roman, going to the bathroom was a social event. Beneath those benches, a constant stream of water flowed through channels, carrying everything away into the great Roman sewer, the Cloaca Maxima, one of the engineering marvels of the ancient world. But now we arrive at the question you have secretly been wondering this entire time. In a world with no paper of any kind, How on earth did they clean themselves? And the answers are ingenious. The Romans shared a sponge fixed to the end of a stick, which was rinsed in water or vinegar and passed from person to person along the bench. Ancient Greeks used smooth pieces of broken pottery or small stones. Across the world, people used whatever their environment offered: handfuls of leaves, soft moss, sheep's wool, snow in the frozen north. And in many cultures, especially where water was plentiful, the simplest and cleanest solution of all, a splash of water in the left hand, a practice still used by much of the world today. What we think of as the normal way to clean ourselves is actually very new. And the truth is that for most of human history, humans were far more resourceful about this than we ever give them credit for. So let's reconstruct what this really meant day to day for your ancestors. Imagine living in a medieval town 1,000 years ago. There is no sewer beneath your feet. Waste is often simply thrown into the street or collected in pits called cesspits dug behind the houses. The smell is overwhelming, a constant part of life you barely notice anymore. Rivers that run through cities become open sewers. Diseases sweep through crowded streets again and again. For centuries, humanity actually went backward, losing the clever sanitation the ancients had discovered and paying for it with waves of devastating plague. It was not until relatively recently in the 17 and 1800s, as cities exploded in size and cholera killed tens of thousands, that humans finally, desperately, reinvented the sewer on a massive scale and built the underground networks that quietly keep your world clean and safe today. And this is the part almost no one appreciates. The modern toilet and the invisible system of pipes and treatment plants behind it is one of the single most important inventions in all of human history. When doctors and scientists have been surveyed about the greatest medical advance of the last 2 centuries, they have often chosen not vaccines, not antibiotics, but sanitation, clean water, and the safe removal of waste have saved more human lives than almost anything else we have ever created. The humble toilet is a quiet hero that has added decades to your life expectancy, and you never even think about it. So the next time you close that door and enjoy those few moments of complete privacy and cleanliness, take just a second to realize what you are actually experiencing. You are enjoying a luxury that almost every human who ever lived would have found miraculous: a private room, clean water, the instant, effortless disappearance of a problem that haunted our ancestors every single day, that shaped their cities, spread their plagues, and drove some of the greatest engineering the ancient world ever produced. For hundreds of thousands of years, this simple, universal human need was a matter of life and death, a daily reminder of how fragile survival really was. Your ancestors solved it with sponges and pottery, with brick drains and open benches, with cleverness and desperation, and a disgust older than history itself. And they solved it well enough that you get to sit here today comfortable and safe, having completely forgotten it was ever a problem at all. That, in its own strange way, is what civilization really is. Not the palaces or the monuments, but the quiet, unglamorous triumph of finally making the hardest parts of being human simply disappear.